The observation deck smelled of wet stone and the slow, filtered exhalations of the ship's biological systems. Vethran stood at the sensor membrane, 3 eyes fixed on the data stream flowing across its surface. Amber light from the walls cast their elongated shadow across the deck. A signal pulse arrived 6 minutes ago from the outer system debris field. Not military, not natural. The signal was something new. It matched no known pattern in the Kethavar archive. Torvin's pattern flashes flickered at a frantic rate. Their enthusiasm bled through the subsonic hum of the deck. You see it, you must see it. The energy curve is completely irregular. Vethran did not turn from the membrane. I see it. The pulse repeated every 3 seconds. A signature that should not exist. No known race in this sector built with that waste heat profile. No known race produced that specific radiation scatter. Torvin pressed closer, their chitinous fingertips tapped against the membrane. It is not a natural collapse, it is not a weapon, it is. Manufacturing, Vethran said, the word hung in the damp air. Something is being built out there. They ordered the course change without consulting protocol. The ship's pilot adjusted the trajectory without comment. The resonance of inquiry shifted. Its engines hummed a half-tone lower as they turned toward the debris field. The approach took 14 minutes. Through the membrane, the image resolved. A cluster of objects hung in the black. They were artificial. That was undeniable. But they were wrong. No grown seals, no smooth biopolymer curves, no organic integration of form and function. The structures were assembled from mismatched hull plates and exposed conduits, jagged edges, mechanical fasteners where there should be seamless bonds. The raw glow of welding torches bled from an open bay door at the center of the largest object. Torvin's pattern flashes stilled for a moment, then they blazed. It is them, the humans. It matches the records from the Endari contact. Vethran studied the image. The records were 30 cycles old. The brief first contact encounter had ended without incident. The humans were classified as a dying species with primitive technology. Their homeworld was gone. Their population was scattered. They were not considered a threat. They were not considered relevant. This did not look like a dying species. They are supposed to have no deep space infrastructure, Vethran said. Their voice stayed flat. No orbital manufacturing capacity, no industrial base. The records were incomplete, Torvin said. Their subsonic hum carried a note of barely restrained glee. We are looking at proof the classification was wrong. A small vessel detached from the workshop. It moved toward them. Its velocity was reckless by Kethavar standards. The Kethavar did not accelerate that fast. No sane pilot would. The vessel had no visible pilot compartment. No viewports, no observation dome, just a blunt metal shape burning hard toward the resonance of inquiry. The vessel began broadcasting a repeating signal. It was a human language Vethran did not recognize. Torvin's pattern flashes went dark. They stood very still for a long moment. Torvin, translate. Torvin's hum carried a tremor. State your intent. Identify. Do not approach further or we will assume hostile actions. Vethran processed the words. There was no fear in the transmission, no plea for aid, no request for first contact greeting. It was a warning. The humans were not waiting to be saved. They were waiting to see if they needed to fight. Vethran hesitated. The correct protocol was clear. Withdraw to a safe distance. Report the encounter to the High Assembly. Wait for instructions from the Council of Observers. That was the rule. That was the law. That was how the Kethavar had survived for 2,000 cycles, by being cautious, by being methodical, by never engaging with an unknown variable until they understood it completely. Torvin stepped closer. Their pattern flashes were slow now, deliberate. You cannot withdraw. This is a once-in-a-lifetime observation opportunity. The humans were thought extinct. Here they are, building, surviving. The protocol. The protocol is wrong for this situation. Torvin's hum dropped to a frequency barely perceptible. Look at what they built with no resources. Look at what they are still building. We need to understand them, not from a report, not from old records, now. Vethran looked at the image on the membrane. The workshop was a wreck. It was held together with force of will and scrap metal, but it was functioning. The humans were out here in a dead system with nothing, and they had built something that should not exist. They made the decision. Remain in position. Transmit the standard first contact greeting package, full spectrum, all major languages. Torvin's pattern flashes erupted in a cascade of acknowledgement. They moved to the communication console, their fingers already dancing across the control surface. The greeting package went out. A standard diplomatic broadcast containing identification data, non-aggression intent, and a request for peaceful exchange. It was the same package the Kethavar had sent to every new species for 300 cycles. The human workshop went silent. The welding torches in the open bay door flickered out. The debris field stopped transmitting random waste heat. The entire structure seemed to hold its breath. Vethran waited 6 seconds, 12:30. The small vessel changed course. It turned away from its original trajectory and began a direct approach toward the resonance of inquiry. The acceleration was brutal. The vessel bled heat across every spectrum as it burned toward them. Torvin's voice was barely a whisper. They are not transmitting a response. Vethran watched the trajectory. The vessel would reach them in 8 minutes. The humans were not waiting for a diplomatic exchange. They were coming aboard. The airlock of the last word smelled like fear and recycled oxygen. Commander Maya Vasari stood with her back to the inner door. Her prosthetic hand rested on the emergency release lever. Red emergency light painted everything in shades of blood and shadow. 2 security personnel flanked her, their rifles low but ready. Gideon Cole crouched at the manual override panel, his stained fingers hovering over the controls. The Kethavar greeting package played through the ship's speakers. A translated voice, flat and precise, read out formal offers, peaceful contact, cultural exchange, knowledge sharing. The words were polite. They were also a script Maya had heard 20 times before from species who wanted something. She cut the transmission. Gideon, prep the airlock for docking. Seal off the corridor behind me. If I don't come back in 30 minutes, you treat this ship as hostile. Gideon looked up. His face was sweat-sheened, his eyes red from 12 hours without sleep. I have no data on their biology, no atmosphere compatibility, no pathogen screening. This is. We learn by doing. Maya cut him off. She had rehearsed that line for 15 years. That's how we've survived. The docking tube extended from the Kethavar vessel with a wet, organic sound. It was not a mechanical construct. It was a living membrane, pale gray and ribbed with pulsing muscle-like bands. It pressed against the last word's airlock and sealed with a hiss. Atmosphere bled through the imperfect connection, damp soil, metallic minerals, a mixture that made Maya's sinuses ache. She opened the inner door alone. The membrane closed around her boots as she stepped into the tube, warm and slick. It pulsed against her calves, her thighs, her hips. She felt it reading her body chemistry through contact, testing pH, temperature, electrochemical signature. A human inside a living throat. The thought should have stopped her. She kept walking. Each step sank slightly into the spongy floor. The walls contracted behind her, pushing her forward. No way back. No way to signal. The membrane wanted her to keep moving, and she obliged because stopping meant admitting she was afraid. The Kethavar airlock opened before she reached it. No visible mechanism, no control panel. It simply dissolved inward, revealing the ship beyond. Vethran stood in the center of the compartment, taller than any human with elongated limbs and skin the color of weathered bronze. 3 eyes in a vertical column, blinking in sequence. No mouth, no nose. Their thorax flickered with patterns of light bioluminescent script, Maya realized, a language written in living color. She raised her prosthetic hand, slow, deliberate. Her black polymer fingers spread wide, exposing the hydraulic tendons, an honest gesture, no weapon, no threat. Just acknowledgement. I am Commander Maya Vasari of the Human Remnant Fleet. You found us. Now tell me what you want. Vethran did not answer immediately. Their 3 eyes blinked again, top to bottom, like a wave rolling through. The thorax flickers intensified. A small device on their chest emitted a flat, translated voice. You speak with confidence for a species that has no home. Maya let the silence stretch. She lowered her hand. We have plenty of homes, they're just not planets. You're standing on one of them. Another pause. Vethran turned their head, the 3 eyes still fixed on her. Their fingers twitched, chitinous points tapping against their own forearm like counting. We must speak where I can record properly. Your vessel is too loud. The electromagnetic interference from your systems damages my documentation. Vethran gestured toward the interior of the ship. A corridor opened behind them, lined with more organic surfaces, faintly pulsing. Maya looked back at the docking tube. The membrane had resealed itself, a seamless wall of living tissue. No visible door, no way to signal her crew. She stepped past Vethran into the alien ship. The airlock closed behind her with a soft, wet seal. The sound of the last word's life support died instantly, replaced by a low hum vibrating through the floor and into her bones. The vibration felt like a heartbeat. It might have been a heartbeat. Vethran walked beside her, their footsteps silent against the organic deck. The corridor curved gently. The radius suggested this ship was not built but grown. No right angles, no sharp corners, everything flowed into everything else. "You are the one who commands," Vethran said. It was not a question. "I'm the one who makes decisions, yes. Your species has no unified government, no central authority. Our records indicate you scatter across systems like debris from an explosion." Maya kept her eyes forward. "Our records indicate your species hasn't left its home cluster in 300 years. You send drones, you observe, you don't engage." Vethran stopped walking. Maya stopped too. She turned to face them. "That is not entirely accurate," Vethran said. The translation device hummed. "We engage when we find something that warrants engagement. Your manufacturing output does." Maya felt the air change. Something in Vethran's posture shifted, a slight tilt of the head, a slower pulse in their thorax patterns. "You have been watching our forge." "We have been measuring it." Vethran's 3 eyes focused on her. The intensity felt physical. "Your rate of material conversion is 7 times faster than our fastest industrial habitat. Your fabrication accuracy degrades at a rate we cannot model. You produce objects with visible flaws. These objects function at 94% of theoretical efficiency." Maya said nothing. "That should not be possible." Vethran's voice dropped, a subsonic rumble that the translation device turned into a whisper. "Your methods are crude, your materials are impure, your processes should fail. They do not." The corridor pulsed around them. The heartbeat rhythm continued. Maya felt it in her teeth, in her prosthetic hand, in the scar running down her face. "We don't have the luxury of perfection," she said. "We build what works and we build it fast. If it breaks, we build a better one. That's not a technique, that's survival." Vethran stared at her for a long moment. Then they turned and continued down the corridor. Maya followed. The floor squelched beneath her boots. The walls contracted, then relaxed. She was alone, surrounded by aliens, inside a living ship that could digest her without effort. No weapon, no signal, no way home. And she had never felt more certain that she was exactly where she needed to be. The observation chamber pulsed around Maya like a living lung. The walls cycled through deep blues and muted ambers. The rhythm had no pattern she could follow. The floor gave under her boots with each step, a spongy surface making her feel like she was walking on moss-covered meat. A drone hovered near the ceiling. It was a smooth ellipsoid of burnished copper. It hummed at a frequency sitting just behind her teeth. Every word she spoke went through it first. Every word Vethran spoke came out as synthesized standard, flat and lifeless. Vethran extended a hand. On their palm rested a sheet of translucent membrane the size of a handkerchief. It glistened under the bioluminescent light. "This is a symbiont mask," Vethran said. The drone carried their words. "It will translate directly, no intermediary." Maya studied the thing. It looked like jelly. It looked alive. "What does it do to me?" "It bonds to your skin. It reads the muscle movements of your throat and the vibrations of your vocal cords. It translates in real time. The process is painless." Maya glanced at the drone, then back at the membrane. She did not trust things bonding to her skin, but she trusted the drone even less. The machine carried every word to a xenolinguist somewhere in the ship. It recorded everything. She picked up the symbiont mask. It was warm, warmer than her hand. It had no weight to speak of, but its density felt wrong for something so thin. She pressed it to her face. The membrane spread. It moved across her cheeks and over her mouth and around her jawline like liquid finding its level. It sealed at her hairline and behind her ears. For a moment there was nothing. Then pressure bloomed behind her eyes. Not pain, presence. She could feel Vethran. It was not words. It was not images. It was a weight in her skull, a pressure shifting as Vethran's bioluminescent patterns shifted. Caution layered over curiosity. Professional detachment sitting like a cold stone in the middle of it all. Maya could feel the shape of their thoughts without knowing their content. "Can you hear me?" Vethran's voice came through clearly now. No drone delay, no synthesized flatness, just sound direct and present. Maya nodded. The mask moved with her face. It felt like wearing someone else's skin. "Good," Vethran's pattern flash sharpened. The pressure in Maya's skull tightened. "Then how did you survive?" The question was obvious. Maya had known it was coming since she stepped into this room, but the weight behind it through the mask made it feel heavier. The evacuation was a catastrophe, she said. Her own voice sounded strange to her. The mask altered the resonance. 97% of the population died. The survivors scattered in whatever ships could be salvaged. We have been running ever since. Vethran's pattern flash stuttered. The pressure in Maya's head shifted to something like a held breath. 97%, Vethran repeated. That number was not a question. It was a landing. Yes. That level of loss would cause cultural collapse in every civilization we know. The social structures would fragment. The knowledge base would degrade. The species would enter a terminal decline within 3 generations. Maya felt the weight of those words through the mask. Vethran was not being cruel. They were stating facts. They were genuinely confused. We did not maintain social cohesion, Maya said. We just kept building. Torvin shifted in the corner. They had been trying to be invisible. They were failing. That is not an answer, Vethran said. It is the only answer I have. Torvin rose. Their movements were quick, almost jerky. The pattern flash on their thorax pulsed. Maya could now feel its rate as a vibration in her own chest. A breach of protocol. Vethran's own pattern sharpened with irritation. The industrial workshop we detected, Torvin said. How many such facilities does the human remnant operate? Vethran's third eye focused on Torvin with a cold precision. Maya felt it as a contraction in her own skull, but Torvin did not back down. Maya considered the question. Honesty was the safest strategy. She had nothing to hide that the Kethavar could not find on their own. 1 large forge, she said. 12 smaller mobile units. We lost the other 18 in the last 5 years. The silence that followed was not empty. It was dense. Vethran's pattern flash went still. The pressure in Maya's head became a flat line, a held note. 18 lost, Vethran said. The words came out slow. You are telling me that you once operated 31 industrial-scale manufacturing facilities. Yes. That is more than we believed your entire species possessed at your peak. Maya frowned, the mask pulled against her skin. What did you think we had? Vethran did not answer immediately. They turned and walked to the curved wall of the observation chamber. The bioluminescent patterns pulsed around them. For a moment Maya could feel Vethran's thoughts through the mask, not words, but shapes. Comparisons, calculations, a framework being rebuilt. How do you manufacture? Vethran asked. Without forge habitats, without biological foundries. Maya blinked. The question made no sense to her. We use mechanical fabrication, she said. Automated assembly lines, computer-guided tooling, standardized parts. We build factories that build machines that build other factories. Vethran turned back to face her. The pattern flash on their thorax had changed. It was faster now, more fragmented. Maya could feel the emotion behind it through the mask, not curiosity anymore, something else, something colder. You build machines, Vethran said. That build other machines, none of it is grown. Correct. And the designs, the specifications, they are stored in data systems, transmitted between facilities, duplicated. Yes. Vethran was silent for a long moment. The walls pulsed. The air tasted sharp and mineral and wrong in Maya's throat. We grow everything, Vethran said at last. Every component of every vessel, every tool, every structure. It is grown from genetic templates over cycles of careful development. Each piece is unique. Each piece is crafted by specialists spending entire lives perfecting a single form. Maya felt the gap open between them. She did not know how to bridge it. That sounds slow, she said. It is slow, Vethran said. The words carried a weight she could not fully read. It is the only way we know. The conversation stalled. The symbiont mask transmitted Vethran's confusion as a physical pressure against Maya's thoughts. A headache with no source. A weight that had nowhere to go. She watched Vethran's pattern flash change again. It shifted from confusion to something she could not name. But through the mask she felt it. A cold contraction, a pulling away. She had just revealed something the Kethavar found deeply wrong. Vethran ended the conversation. The words came out clipped and formal. They needed time to process what they had learned. They offered Maya quarters on their ship. They promised to continue the exchange tomorrow. Maya left the observation chamber. The symbiont mask was still bonded to her face. Vethran had not told her how to remove it. She walked down the curved corridor, the floor soft under her boots, the walls pulsing in rhythms she could not predict. And then she felt it. A fragment of Vethran's private communication with Torvin, transmitted through the mask by accident, a leak in the bond. The translation was incomplete, half-formed words, static where meaning should have been. But one word came through clearly. Primitive. Not in the sense of simple, not in the sense of unsophisticated. In the sense of dangerous. Vethran was afraid of her, and Maya did not know why. The private study aboard the Resonance of Inquiry smelled of dried preservative compounds. A sharp herbal tang filled the air. Vethran associated it with careful thought. They had not moved from their position before the holographic display in 6 standard hours. Their third eye flickered, scanning the projected schematic of the human forge from a dozen angles simultaneously. The data was wrong, or rather it was right, but the feeling was wrong. Vethran rotated the image of a human drive coupling. They pulled up the Kethavar equivalent, a component grown over 30 cycles by a master artisan in the orbital gardens of Thes 4. The human version was visibly cruder. Its surface showed tool marks. The tolerances were loose. Vethran could measure the variance with their optical implants. The Kethavar part was smoother, stronger, more efficient by every metric that mattered. But the human part was one of 40,000 identical units. Every coupling in every human ship in this system was the same. Everyone could be swapped into any drive assembly without adjustment. Vethran's bioluminescent patterns flickered into a sequence meaning mild nausea. They dismissed the display and sat back in the living chair. The chair shifted to support their elongated spine. Torvin stood in the corner of the study, arms folded, watching in silence. The younger observer had not spoken since Vethran began the analysis. "You have questions?" Vethran said. The subsonic hum of their voice vibrated through the chamber's atmosphere. Torvin's patterns pulsed with hesitation. "You have been staring at data for half a rotation." "Because I do not understand it." "It is simple," Torvin said. "Their components are inferior, they simply make many of them." Vethran turned their vertical eyes toward the younger observer. The gesture carried no expression on their featureless face, but Torvin had learned to read the tension in their posture. "Yes, that is the part I do not understand. Why does an inferior approach produce a functional result at a scale exceeding our own?" Torvin had no answer. Vethran did not expect one. They requested access to the human forge through the diplomatic channel. The reply came within an hour, carried by a human courier drone welded together from salvaged parts and painted with a symbol Vethran could not identify. Commander Vasari's terms were clear. Vethran could visit the forge alone. No armed Kethavar escort. No recording devices beyond what Vethran carried personally. The conditions were degrading. They were also necessary. The human shuttle arrived to collect Vethran from the Resonance of Inquiry's docking collar. Torvin stepped aboard before Vethran could object. "If you are going alone, you need someone to observe," Torvin said. "Protocol allows it if the observer is unarmed. Protocol does not allow junior observers to override their superiors." "Then override me when we return." Vethran let them stay. Shuttle vibrated. The sensation was not painful, but it was constant. A low-frequency humming resonated in Vethran's chest bones. It made their internal equilibrium organs work harder than they should. The cabin was unpainted, bare metal walls, a single viewport patched with what looked like adhesive tape. The pilot was a young human with short, dark hair and a pattern of small metal rings embedded in one ear. They chewed a fibrous plant material with their mouth open, producing a wet clicking sound. They stared at Vethran with undisguised curiosity for the entire journey. "First time on a human ship?" the pilot asked. "Yes." "Yeah, figured. You look like you're figuring something out." Vethran did not respond. They focused on the shaking. It felt like the shuttle was tearing itself apart. But it did not shake apart, it held together. The pilot seemed unconcerned. The forge filled the forward viewport as they approached. Vethran had seen the schematics. The reality was worse. The asteroid was pitted, scarred, wrapped in layers of mismatched hull plating salvaged from a dozen different ship classes. It looked like a wound that had healed wrong. Gouts of steam or vented atmosphere burst from irregular intervals along its surface. Lights flickered through gaps in the plating. The entire structure hummed, not the vibration of the shuttle, but a deeper, more rhythmic sound, a heartbeat made of metal. They docked through a tube that smelled of hot metal and ozone. A human met them at the airlock. He was older than the pilot, with stained hands and the look of someone who had been woken from sleep. "Gideon Cole," he said. "Senior engineer. Follow me, keep your hands off the machinery, and try not to breathe too deep. The air recycling is behind schedule." Torvin asked questions. Vethran did not hear them. They walked through the fabrication decks. The noise was overwhelming, a rhythmic pounding never stopping, echoing off the metal walls and through Vethran's hollow bones. Rows of machines stamped identical parts from sheets of metal. The parts fell into bins. The bins were wheeled to the next station. Assembly arms welded components together with precision, but no artistry. There was no craft here, no growth, no individual signature on any piece. Bins of identical screws, identical panels, identical circuit boards, everything was the same. Everything was made to be replaced. Vethran stopped at a maintenance bay. A human worker stood beside a cracked hull plate. The worker examined it for perhaps 10 seconds. Then they grabbed the edge of the plate and pulled. It came free with a screech of stressed metal. The worker carried it to a rack, slid a new plate from the same rack, and installed it in the empty space. The entire process took 4 minutes. Vethran timed it. The original plate was discarded. It would be melted down, reformed, made into another identical plate. The new plate would be installed until it cracked in turn. Then it would be replaced again. Torvin had stopped asking questions. The younger observer stood beside a bin of fasteners, staring at the uniform contents. Their patterns were dark, confused. "This is less than 30% capacity," Torvin said. Vethran turned. "What?" Torvin pointed to a bank of displays mounted above the stamping machines. "The readout. This deck is operating at 28% of its maximum output. I asked the engineer why." Vethran found Gideon Cole leaning against a support pillar. The human looked tired. "Yeah," he said. "We're low on raw materials. The last few hauls were thin, but the forge can scale to full production in 48 hours if we find a good source." Vethran did the calculation. They had access to the forge's specifications from the approach scans. They knew its volume, its power consumption, its material throughput. They calculated what full capacity would produce in a standard cycle. The number was wrong. It could not be right. They calculated again. The number did not change. If the forge operated at full capacity for one standard cycle, it could produce more manufactured goods than the entire Kethavar Pack's artisan guilds could grow in a decade. Not better goods, not more elegant goods, but more. Enough to replace every damaged component in a fleet. Enough to build new ships from raw materials faster than any enemy could destroy them. "Stop taking notes," Vethran said. Torvin's hand froze over their data tablet. "Sir, I need to think." The journey back to the resonance of inquiry was silent. Vethran sat in the vibrating cabin and stared at the patch on the viewport. The pilot chewed their plant fiber and watched them in the reflection. Vethran returned to their study. They requested an urgent encrypted communication with Counselor Rin on the High Assembly. The request was queued. The connection would take time to establish across the light years. They sat in the living chair and waited. Their patterns cycled through sequences they had not used in years, the dark amber of deep concern, the slow pulse of a mind rearranging its fundamental assumptions. The humans were not less advanced. They were sideways. That sideways method, applied at scale, produced results no Kethavar forge could match. Vethran had spent their entire career believing technology advanced through elegance, through refinement, through the careful growth of better and more perfect solutions. The humans had bypassed elegance entirely. They had chosen speed and volume and replaceability, and they had won. The door to the study opened. Torvin stood in the entrance, their patterns flickering with urgency. "You need to see this. I am waiting for a communication from the assembly. This is more important." Torvin held out a data tablet. On it was a fragment of a human transmission intercepted during the forge visit. A single sentence. Vethran read it. "Tell Vasari we found a dense asteroid field in Sector 9. Request permission to begin full-scale extraction within 72 hours." The forge was not a survival mechanism. It was a seed. The humans were not satisfied with their current capacity. They were actively seeking to expand. They had found a new source of raw material, and they were already asking permission to consume it. Vethran looked up from the tablet. Their patterns had gone still. A flat, featureless amber. It meant they had no emotional category for what they were processing. Torvin waited. The communication request to Counselor Rin remained pending. Vethran stared at it and realized they no longer knew what to recommend. Engagement or quarantine. Neither option seemed adequate. Neither option accounted for what they had just seen. The forge was a seed, and Vethran had just watched it begin to grow. The vibration was a living thing in Gideon's bones. 16 hours in the same chair and his spine had stopped complaining. Now it just hummed along with the fabricator banks below. The holographic display cast a blue-white light. The glow made the smoke haze look like deep water. He had not blinked in the last 10 minutes. He was past blinking. The numbers sat in front of him, like a confession he did not want to make. 2 iterations of analysis, 2 different methodologies, same result both times. He ran a third set anyway because the human brain did not trust good news from a broken system. The Forge's primary computation node was salvaged from a freighter. The ship had lost atmosphere in the Proxima evacuation. The node had a tendency to overheat on the left quadrants and drop floating point calculations. He compensated manually. The numbers still held. The door cycled open. He did not turn around. He knew the footsteps measured, deliberate, a slight drag on the left foot where a shrapnel wound had healed badly. Commander Vasari. "You look like death," Maya said. "Death would have stopped for coffee." Gideon rubbed his eyes with both palms. The back of his left eyelid kept catching on a stray eyelash. He blinked until it stopped. "I have your assessment." She stepped into the room and the light caught the bare mechanism of her prosthetic hand. She never used the cosmetic sleeve. Said it made her look like she was hiding something. Gideon respected that. Hiding things took energy he did not have. She stood beside the display. "Give it to me." Gideon tapped the console. A data sheet expanded across the holographic field. Kethavar material densities, Kethavar energy conversion ratios, Kethavar structural integrity margins. He had extracted the numbers from the survey data the delegation had let them keep. It was not much. It was enough. "They are better than us in every category that matters," Gideon said. "Their alloys are 40% stronger per unit mass. Their power cores run at 3 times our efficiency. Their weapons systems are built around energy densities we cannot achieve without dedicated reactors the size of this room." Maya said nothing. Her eyes moved across the data. Left to right, top to bottom, she was memorizing it. Gideon waited. He knew her rhythm. She looked at him, but... It was not a question. It was a prompt. She knew him well enough to hear the shape of a sentence that had not finished. He pulled up the second graph. The production curve filled the display, 2 lines on the same axis, one flat, the other rising at an angle that looked like a wall. "This is our manufacturing output over the last 4 years, Gideon said. "And this is their estimated output based on the Forge data they let us scan." He pointed at the flat line. "They make things one at a time. Each component is grown. Each assembly is a discrete biological event. It's artisanship. It's beautiful. It's slow." He pointed at the rising line. "We make things in batches. One fabricator node can produce 100 identical parts in the time their forge takes to grow one. We have 247 active nodes on this asteroid alone. They have never seen anything like it." Maya's face did not change. "What are you telling me, Gideon?" "They can outbuild anything we can build." He let the words sit for a moment. "But they can't outbuild us, not in volume, not in speed." He looked at her directly. "If it comes to a war of production, they lose in 3 standard years, maybe 2. The silence lasted longer than he expected. Maya stared at the curve. The human curve kept rising. The Kethavar line stayed flat. The disparity was so wide it looked like a mistake in the visualization. He had checked the scaling 3 times. It was not a mistake. "What if they don't give us 2 years?" Maya said. Gideon had been waiting for that question. He had been sitting in this chair for 16 hours waiting for that question, and he had an answer he did not want to give. He switched the display to a different data set. Old Earth military archives, redacted, reclassified, leaked and buried and exhumed by people. They did not understand what they were holding. He had found it in a salvage cache on a dead freighter stored on a data core physically damaged to prevent recovery. He recovered it anyway. It took him 6 months. The schematic was not complete. It did not need to be. "Reality fracture," Gideon said. "Banned under the old Terran Accord, outlawed before the evacuation. The weapon that ended the last civil war on Earth." Maya's expression tightened. "I know what it is." "Then you know it works and you know it leaves scars." He pointed at the schematic. "It does not require precision. It does not require advanced energy systems. It requires a focused destabilization field and a power source large enough to sustain a half-second breach. We have both." "The dimensional scarring is permanent," Maya said. "Yes. It cannot be aimed precisely." "No." It destroys everything in a radius that cannot be calculated in advance. That is correct. Gideon turned to face her fully. It is the worst option we have, and it is the only option that gives us a chance if they do not give us 2 years. Maya's eyes did not leave his. She held his gaze for 5 seconds, 7, 10. Keep that file classified, she said. I do not want the Kethavar to know it exists unless they force my hand. She did not tell him to stop working on it. The silence between them was its own kind of permission. Gideon understood. He turned back to the display and began closing the schematics. His hands were steady. His heart rate had not changed. He had expected a harder decision than the one she had just given him. The junior technician at the far console let out a sharp breath. Gideon looked up. The technician was staring at a secondary sensor feed, one hand pressed against her earpiece. Her face had gone pale. Commander, she said, we have an incoming vessel, Kethavar transponder, larger than the survey ship. Maya crossed to the console in 3 steps. She leaned over the display. Gideon watched her shoulders change position, the shift from conversation to command. Transponder data says it's carrying a full delegation, the technician said. Broadcasting formal request for high-level meeting, diplomatic protocols active. Maya studied the display. Her good hand rested on the console edge. The prosthetic hung at her side, fingers curled slightly. Gideon, she said, look at this. He moved to stand beside her. The sensor display showed the Kethavar vessel at the system's outer marker. Clean silhouette, smooth curves, no visible weapon mounts, but around it 3 smaller vessels, positioned in a loose formation. Not military, not survey craft. Something Gideon had not seen before. They brought observers, Maya said quietly. Or witnesses, it depends on how this conversation goes. She looked at him. Gideon looked at the formation. The 3 vessels were equidistant from the main ship, perfect spacing, moving in synchrony. He did not know what they were, but he knew they had not been there before. The low thrum in his spine changed pitch. The primary fabricator was running at the edge of its tolerance. It had been running that way for 3 days straight. Gideon did not think they had 3 years. He did not think they had 3 months. The meeting chamber hummed at a frequency Sora could feel in her teeth. The temperature was a compromise. It was cool enough for Kethavar comfort, cold enough that Sora's bare arms had raised goosebumps within the first minute. She sat at the circular table and tried not to shiver. The star field through the transparent ceiling stretched forever. Cold, indifferent. She could see the ragged silhouette of the forge against the distant glow of the system's star. She forced herself to look away. Counselor Rin's holographic projection occupied the far side of the table. The ancient Kethavar's pattern flash moved like honey in winter. Slow, deliberate. A relay drone hovered beside the projection. It translated the old one's subsonic communication for the symbiont mask. Sora felt the translation settle against her thoughts like a hand on her shoulder. What does the human remnant want? The question was direct. No greeting, no preamble. Sora had prepared for this. She had rehearsed the answer for 3 days, refining every phrase, anticipating every objection. Mutual cooperation, knowledge exchange, a partnership between equals, carefully worded to avoid implying the humans were supplicants. She opened her mouth. Commander Visari's voice cut through her calm, low and flat. Tell them the truth, Bright. They'll smell the polish. Sora's throat closed. The prepared speech dissolved. She looked at Vethran. They sat across from her with their 3 eyes fixed on her face. Their thorax pattern pulsed at a steady rate, patient, curious, waiting. Torvin lurked against the far wall, arms folded, trying to look like they had every right to be there. Sora let the breath out. She let the mask go. Survival, she said. We want to survive. Counselor Rin's hologram did not move. The relay drone adjusted its hover by a centimeter. We have nothing left to lose, Sora continued. Earth is gone. Our colonies are scattered. We are a diaspora with a single remaining industrial asset and a population that fits in 3 ships. We will trade our manufacturing capacity for raw materials, safe passage through your territory, and non-interference in our internal affairs. The words hung in the balanced air. Vethran's pattern flash brightened. They leaned forward. That is remarkably direct. Deception requires energy we don't have, Sora said. She was surprised by how steady her voice sounded. We know what we are, a remnant, a people without a home, but we can build. We can build faster than anyone you've ever encountered. That is our offer. Take it or leave it. Counselor Rin's projection flickered. The old one's subsonic hum shifted into a register the mask translated as skepticism. Define the terms. Sora reached for the datapad on the table. She activated it. A schematic of the forge appeared in the air above the circular surface. The core forge produces finished goods at a rate of approximately 240 metric tons per standard cycle. We can increase that by 40% if we secure consistent material input. In exchange for mining rights in unclaimed systems along the galactic rim, we will supply you with structural components, hull plating, drive assemblies, and fabrication nodes, all at a fraction of the time your own forges would require. Vethran's pattern flash danced with interest. They had seen the forge. They knew the numbers were not exaggerated. Counselor Rin's hologram remained still for a long moment. Quality guarantees, production timelines, exclusivity clauses. Sora nodded. She had expected this. The negotiation turned technical. She met it clause for clause. She had studied Kethavar contract structure for 3 weeks straight. She knew their preference for nested contingencies, their habit of building escape hatches into every agreement, their cultural need to frame trade as mutual obligation rather than transaction. She parried every push. Vethran pressed for a quality standard matching their own biological fabrication. Sora offered a tiered system, standard output for bulk goods, bespoke production for critical components. Counselor Rin demanded exclusivity for the first 5 cycles. Sora counteroffered at 2 with a renewable option. Torvin shifted against the wall. Their pattern flash was erratic, nervous. Sora felt it through the symbiont mask, a pressure behind her eyes, a faint sense of wrongness like a note played slightly flat. The Kethavar were stalling. She checked the chronometer on her datapad. 47 minutes had passed. They had not agreed to a single substantive term. "They're buying time," she muttered under her breath. The mask transmitted the words anyway. Vethran's eyes flickered toward her. Torvin stepped forward. Their pattern flash went bright and urgent. "The High Assembly has already decided." "Silence." Vethran's thorax went dark, a flat, angry black. Sora had never seen it before. "Torvin." "Someone has to say it." Torvin's voice trembled through the mask's translation. "They're going to quarantine the human remnant. This negotiation is a formality, a courtesy. The decision was made 3 cycles ago." Counselor Rin's hologram flickered hard enough to distort. "Specialist Torvin, you are in violation of." "Screw protocol," Torvin pointed at Sora with a chitin-tipped finger. "They deserve to know. They came here in good faith." Sora felt the world tilt. The prepared remarks, the careful negotiations, the hours of study, all of it crumbled. She had believed she was making progress, building trust, creating a path. They had never intended to let her walk through it. She reached up and peeled the symbiont mask from her face. The cool air hit her skin. The pressure behind her eyes faded. She stood. "No quarantine." Vethran rose from their seat. "Sora, you don't get to lock us in a system and study us like specimens." Her voice was shaking. She did not care. "We are not an endangered species for your observation. We are a people. We have weapons. We have the forge. We have nothing left to lose, and I promise you that makes us more dangerous than anything you have ever encountered." Counselor Rin's hologram stabilized. The old one's pattern flash was barely visible now, a faint pulse, like a heartbeat slowing. "The quarantine order stands." The relay drone cut the connection. Rin's projection dissolved. 2 Kethavar security drones entered the chamber. They moved with silent, organic precision. One flanked Vethran, one moved toward Torvin. "This isn't over," Torvin said as the drone herded them toward the door. Their pattern flash was frantic. "I'll testify. I'll tell the assembly what I saw at the forge. They have to understand." Vethran looked back once. Their 3 eyes met Sora's. The pattern on their thorax pulsed with something the mask might have translated as apology, or grief, or both. Then they were gone. Sora stood alone in the balanced air. The star field through the ceiling stared down at her. Cold, indifferent, the same stars that had watched Earth die. A Kethavar attendant appeared in the doorway. The escort would not speak. It simply pointed toward the docking bay. The shuttle ride back was silent. The forge grew larger in the viewport. Its mismatched hull plates caught the system's light and threw it back in 100 directions. It was ugly. It was patched. It was alive. Sora walked through the airlock and found Commander Vasari waiting. Maya's gray hair was plastered to her scalp with sweat. Her prosthetic hand hung at her side, the exposed hydraulic tendons gleaming under the forge lights. "They decided before we even arrived," Sora said. The words came out flat, hollow. "We were never going to get a deal. They're going to quarantine us." Maya listened. Her face did not change. Then she turned and walked toward the forge's central control node. Gideon Cole was there, bent over a terminal with carbon-stained fingers and bloodshot eyes. "Gideon," Maya said, "full production, all systems. We have 2 weeks before they come back with something bigger than a survey ship." Gideon looked up. He did not ask questions. He did not argue. He reached for the master control. The lights shifted, amber to white. The vibration through the deck increased as the fabrication nodes powered up in sequence. A low, rising hum that built like a held breath. Sora felt it in her chest, in her teeth, in the bones of her skull. The forge was no longer negotiating. It was building. The command deck had become an oven. Maya Vasari stood at the center of it. Sweat ran down her face in steady rivulets. The cooling system screamed in protest against the heat pouring up from the fabrication decks below. Every node in the core forge ran at maximum output. Every arm moved. Every extruder fed raw material into shaping dies that glowed cherry red with constant use. 12 days. 12 days of non-stop production. The forge had consumed 63 tons of scavenged hull plate, 18 tons of refined nickel iron from the asteroid's own body, and every piece of salvageable circuitry the human remnant possessed. Thousands of components sat in the staging bays. Drive assemblies, power conduits, structural framing, all standardized, all identical, all waiting for assembly into a fleet that did not yet exist. Gideon Cole stood at his engineering station. His stained fingers danced across a holographic schematic. His face was gaunt. He had slept 4 hours in the past 3 days. The tremor in his hands showed it. "We don't have time to build ships," he said. Maya already knew. She watched the countdown timer on the main display. 2 days until the Kethavar enforcement fleet arrived. 2 days until the quarantine became a cage. "What do we have time to build?" she asked. Gideon pulled up a schematic. The image rotated slowly in the blue light of his display, a device that was more framework than mechanism. No elegant curves, no smooth surfaces. It looked like something assembled from salvage because it was. "The reality fracture," he said. "It needs a destabilization field generator and a power source. We have both." Sora Bright stood at the edge of the command deck. Her shaved head gleamed with sweat. The circuit board tattoo on her neck seemed to writhe in the flickering light. She had not spoken in hours. Maya studied the schematic. The device was crude. It was unstable. And if the technical data from the Terran Accord archives was accurate, it would leave permanent dimensional scarring in any system where it was deployed. "What is the collateral range?" she asked. Gideon hesitated. "We don't have precise data. The original tests were conducted in deep void. No planetary bodies, no traffic. The archives say the scarring propagates outward at a variable rate." "How variable?" "Assume everything within 1,000,000 kilometers is compromised. Assume it stays compromised for a century." The deck was silent, except for the hum of the fabricators below. Maya said, "The Kethavar have no defense against this." "No," Gideon said. "They have no concept of it. Their entire technological framework is built around precision and craftsmanship. This is the opposite. This is brute force applied to the fabric of reality." She looked at the countdown timer. 47 hours remaining. The choice was simple. Use the weapon and become something the galaxy would never trust, or refuse to use it and accept extinction. "Build it," Maya said, "but do not arm it yet. I want it ready for assembly in 12 hours. I will decide when to deploy." Gideon nodded. He turned back to the schematic. His fingers began modifying the design parameters. Sora spoke for the first time. "Commander, if we use it, every species in the sector will see us as a threat. We will have no allies, no trade partners, no future." Maya turned to face her. "We already have no future. The Kethavar just showed us that. The only question is whether we take them with us or find another way." She walked to the communications station. She opened a channel to the resonance of inquiry. "Vethran, I know you can hear this. I need you to understand something." A pause, then Vethran's voice filtered through the translation system. "I am listening. Your assembly has decided to quarantine us. You have an enforcement fleet on the way. I am offering you one chance to call them off. We have a weapon your people cannot stop. It will scar this system permanently. I do not want to use it, but I will." Silence stretched across the connection. "What do you want?" Vethran asked. "A seat at the table, not as subjects, not as specimens, as equals. We will trade, we will cooperate, but we will not be penned in and studied." Another pause. The hum of the forge filled the background. "I will relay your terms to the High Assembly," Vethran said, "but I cannot guarantee they will accept. Then you have until the enforcement fleet arrives to convince them. After that, I will assume your answer is no." She closed the channel. The countdown timer continued its steady descent. 46 hours, 45. The forge groaned beneath them. The fabricators never stopped. Maya stood at the main display and watched the sensor feed. The Kethavar enforcement fleet had entered the system's outer edge. 12 ships, all grown, all beautiful, all slow. She looked at the reality fracture assembly bay. The framework took shape. Gideon's team worked with furious precision. "Gideon, how long until the weapon is fully operational?" 31 hours if we push the power conduits to the limit." "Push them." He did not argue. 30 hours passed. The enforcement fleet reached the inner marker. The reality fracture sat in its cradle, a crude cage of metal and cables surrounding a destabilization field generator. It looked like something that should not exist. It looked like a wound waiting to happen. Maya opened a channel to the fleet command vessel. "This is Commander Maya Vasari of the Human Remnant. You have entered our operational space. I am transmitting a schematic of our weapon system. Your analyst will confirm it is functional. I am asking one more time. Stand down the quarantine order or I will activate the device." Minutes passed. The Kethavar vessels held position. Then a new signal arrived, not from the fleet, from the resonance of inquiry. Vethran's voice came through, tight with urgency. "The Assembly has voted. Quarantine is suspended pending further review. The fleet is ordered to withdraw." Maya let out a breath she had been holding for 3 days. "Why the change?" she asked. "Because Torvin presented their testimony. Because I transmitted the forge production data. Because the Assembly realized that a species capable of building a reality-altering weapon from salvage does not deserve quarantine. It deserves respect." Maya stared at the display. The Kethavar fleet was already turning. One by one, they accelerated away from the system. "There will be conditions," Vethran continued. "Observers will remain, trade agreements must be negotiated, but the quarantine is lifted." Maya looked at the reality fracture. It sat in its cradle, still active, still waiting. "We can live with conditions," she said. "Thank you, Vethran." "Do not thank me yet. You still have to deal with the Assembly. But for now, you have a future." The channel closed. Gideon slumped against his console. Sora sat down slowly, her legs giving way. The forge continued to hum, its fabricators still running, still producing. Maya looked at the countdown timer. She stopped it. 47 seconds remained. She walked to the reality fracture cradle. She placed her hand on the cold metal frame. Then she gave the order to begin disassembly. The weapon would not be needed today. But she kept the schematics. Just in case.